Hey everyone, welcome back to talking about subtext. So last time in particular we talked about crafting, how you use subtext to craft unreliable narrators and blind characters who are blind to things. You can also use subtext to create powerful revelations, in emphasis, for your audience, right? Powerful revelations for your audience. Instead of relying on the character having a revelation, which that can still be effective, but it has a different feel to it, you can use subtext to let the audience have a revelation about the story. Now remember, the audience completes subtext. They are the ones who put two and two together. So that moment of revelation happens inside of them. It's not on the page. So, and you could even say that this tactic, this method, can overlap with dramatic irony. When done well, the effect usually leaves the audience with a feeling that their head might explode because this realization is so crazy. And I don't have an example for this one in particular because this is the sort of method that can take pages to render the experience. But I'll give an example where some readers may have experienced this that hopefully people are familiar with. So if you look at The Hunger Games, book 1, right, by Suzanne Collins. So Katniss is blind, right? And I talked last time about characters who may be blind. Katniss is blind because of previously made judgments. She's blind to Peeta's feelings for her. Through pretty much the entire book, Katniss misinterprets his action. Since we are in Katniss's viewpoint, our perspective of Peeta is shaped by her. She tells us what kind of person Peeta is. She gives us her interpretation of him as we are introduced to his character. But as the novel progresses, the subtext that Peeta actually genuinely likes her gets stronger, and the implications get stronger. And at some point, the reader, not Katniss, the reader has the revelation that Peeta is actually in love with Katniss. So there's this shift in context, and the reader's viewpoint begins to actually deviate from the viewpoint characters, which I'm going to talk about in a future video. In order to create this effect, the subtext has to get stronger and stronger by implications and contradictions and its placements structurally in the text. The closer you pair contradictions, the more obvious the subtext becomes. So to begin with, you might want to have the contradiction spread out over pages and chapters. But as the subtext escalates, you place those contradictions closer and closer together so it becomes more and more obvious. The moment of revelation might happen when contradictions are nearly on top of each other, only like a paragraph or a sentence away, and we see them being unaddressed or misinterpreted by the viewpoint character again. So then the context shifts and the reader comes to this mind-blowing conclusion that the character or the narrator doesn't see. So it can have a very powerful effect on the audience. Of course, doing something like this, it takes a careful balancing act. Again, you need to make the subtext, if you make it too obvious and your character too blind for too long, the audience can get frustrated and irritated with the character's stupidity. Unless, of course, you use that stupidity of your character intentionally as like an entertaining advantage. But generally, they're going to get annoyed. If I have all the contradictions and misinterpretations all stacked together and heavily implied from the get-go, it's going to be annoying to watch my character take the length of a book to come to a conclusion that the audience got on the first page, right? It's annoying. So whenever you have a fail at writing subtext, one of the first places to look at is the size of your gaps. The gaps between contradictions, gaps between implications and a character's understanding of those implications, and gaps between how heavy the subtext is and how oblivious your character is. Whenever you have a fail or things that aren't working out with subtext, look at those things. The next way that subtext is great for is when you're using it with humor. So I've heard that some of the best jokes told are those where the audience tells the joke themselves, meaning that the audience discovers the punchline. It's not in the text, right? So shows like The Office and Parks and Recreation, They use this kind of humor all the time. We understand the joke because of the subtext. The character's behavior and body language, right, helps give us that subtext. And it's funnier because we, as the audience, come to the conclusion of the joke. It's what's not said and the way it's not that's funny. I talked more about this type of humor in one of my humor videos when I did that series. I'll try to leave a link to it in the description of this video. If I remember, if I don't, please leave a comment. But anyway, so in order to create this kind of humor, again, right, it's a balancing act. You need to make the gap between what is stated and implied. Like, you need to balance it out, right? If it's too obvious and in your face, it can get annoying, okay? For example, I remember one specific scene in Parks and Recreation where Leslie's best friend, Anne, is going to start dating a guy Leslie had a one-night stand with. And Leslie keeps saying she's fine with it, right? But she keeps eating massive amounts of whipped cream as she says it. So you can see already there's the subtext there, right? Now, the idea for the subtext was fine, but the camera crew kept zooming in and zooming in on this huge spoonfuls of whipped cream. Sure, like one zoom would have been fine, but they did it so much, it became like so obvious that it was like the narrator was saying, "Did you get it? Did you get it? Did you see the subtext? Did you get this joke?" And at that point, it was just like, you had to be an idiot to not get the joke. So it wasn't funny, or as funny as it could have been. It was just delivered too heavy-handedly. So they barely left any room for me as an audience member to come to a conclusion about the joke and laugh about it as I experienced that. So you need to imply enough for the reader to get it, but not so much that you basically explained the joke to them. The moment where your audience comes to a conclusion about the subtext joke is the moment when they laugh. So, those are two more ways that you can use subtext. Next time we're going to do a little, U-turn. We're going to wing our way back into characters. And I'm going to be talking about how subtext is used to show your character's conscious thinking versus subconscious thinking. And you may have not really thought about that, but this can be another really effective tool. So please, as always, follow and subscribe me if you like my videos, and get my latest writing tips at my website, which is septembercfox.com. And thank you, and I hope to see you guys here next time.